Did you know that filings with the probate court are not private? My name is Andrew Ayers. I'm an estate planning and business law attorney with offices in Edina, Minnesota and New York City. Today, let's take a quick look at those probate filings that have to be made after somebody has died and what those privacy concerns are when you don't have an estate plan in place. So when most people are thinking about their legacy, one of the last things they think about is the fact that their filings on behalf of their estate are going to be public. This comes up quite a bit when you see somebody famous has died. We have a celebrity estate like Lisa Marie Presley, and then the documents become public immediately when they're filed. However, you can later go back and ask a court to make them private. And while that may seem like a pretty simple step, the fact is to get there, you've got to go through a whole set of court filings, and the court may or may not agree to make your estate filings private. So when my clients discuss their estate plan, and especially when we look at some advanced topics, this is usually one of the top things on their list, is we want to keep as much about your legacy private as we can. If you die without an estate plan, if you die without a will, then all of your assets and all of your liabilities have to be submitted to the court. All of your creditors have to be notified. And theoretically, any of your neighbors can go down to that courthouse and look at the filings and figure out what you actually owned and what money you owed at the time of your death. Now, recently this came into focus for one of my clients who her father-in-law had passed away. And for some reason, so this was the wife of a client, and for some reason, the wife was contacted by a realtor. And the realtor was asking questions about the estate of my client's wife's dead father-in-law. In this case, my client, it was his father who had died. And the way they had gotten the information was, first, they had seen the estate filing that the father-in-law had passed away. The next step is they can go look online and look for an obituary or look for other information about the deceased person. So these days when you have a funeral or there's a mass at a church, there's often either a paragraph or some kind of listing of all the family members that the deceased person left behind. So in this case, this intrepid realtor had looked at the names of the family members and apparently decided, well, I don't want to go to the widow because her husband had just died, and I'm not going to go to one of the children because they're grieving the death of their father. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to reach out to the daughter-in-law of the deceased person. Now, ironically, down the road, my client's mother, who was still living, also then got a formal letter from this realtor who had reached out and spoken to my client's wife. But the whole situation gave my client a big feeling of ick. He was not happy with the fact that his wife was getting a text message from a realtor asking if they had any questions or if they could come by to see the house, to see if the house needed to be sold. Now, what's even worse is, of course, my client's mother was still alive and living in the house and had no intention of selling the house. So it created an overall sense of uneasiness throughout the family. So what this does is highlight some of the privacy concerns we have with our probate court filings. So the first thing we can see from the story is the public access to records. So when somebody dies and we have probate filings, usually their death certificate and a will if they have one, and if they don't, we usually have petitions and schedules of assets. All of these documents are public, and your creditors will be reviewing them, and other people beyond just creditors, in this case this realtor, are able to review the records and go through them and figure out who is the surviving family members of a deceased person, and maybe they want to reach out to them for some kind of a reason. Now, even more nefarious is the second concern we have of privacy is identity theft. And if you've paid attention to the news, every now and then a story will hit the national news of somebody using a dead person's social security number or other financial information to take out new credit cards, for example, or take out other loans. So that is a possibility out there with your identity theft criminals who will be also scraping the probate records to see if there's enough there to put together an idea of what someone's financial life looked like that they could then apply for credit, because not everybody is going to know you're dead when you first die. And so if they can get through it quick enough, get to those credit card companies, get to a bank, maybe they can get some money before anybody realizes that the person who borrowed the money is dead. And the third privacy concern is what the story was all about: unwanted attention. Many families don't want to be contacted by people after a family member has died. They don't want a realtor calling asking if they can list the house. They don't want somebody saying, hey, is their car available? I know they had a fancy 1957 Corvette and maybe they want to sell it now. So that unwanted attention is another reason we want to make sure that where we can avoid public filings with the probate court. So there's 4 main ways when I work with clients that we can protect privacy. The first thing we can do is use a trust. So if we have assets that are owned by a trust, those assets do not pass through the probate court. They don't get filed as part of the probate court proceedings. You will likely have to disclose to the probate court that there is a trust in place, but you don't necessarily have to list out the assets and say where they're being distributed to. And this goes into the second point, which is you want to plan ahead with a full estate plan. We want to look at all these different assets and make sure they're titled properly, they're going to the right places, and then we want to keep out of the probate court's filings. The third thing we want to do is work with professionals. Work with your lawyer, work with an accountant, a financial advisor, a life insurance agent. What we do is all of us together put together a plan where we can do as much as we can to keep assets out of the probate court, whether it's working with a trust or working with an LLC or using life insurance policies that flow into a trust. We have a variety of tools and options available to us that you don't have if you just die without a will, in which case all of these assets have to be in those public probate court filings. And then the final step we want to make sure we do is review and update your plans regularly. So in the case of the client whose father had passed away, another issue with the probate court was the father had a bunch of different assets, but one asset didn't have a beneficiary on it. And so that asset actually made it into the probate court filings. And had they been updating their plan regularly and paying attention to the beneficiary designations, they would have caught that there was no beneficiary on that account, and it would not have been included in the probate court filings. So that's why we want to work yearly with our financial advisors, make sure the beneficiaries are properly designated, and also update estate planning documents as we bring in new assets if they have to go into a trust or we have other changes we need to make. We want to make sure our documents are up to date so we can avoid the public filings. Now, this is a lot of information about probate court, and there's a lot of other intricacies that you may be interested in. If you'd like to set up a telephone call to go over some more questions you have, you can go to my website, andrewmayers.com. There's a red legal strategy session button on the front page. If you click that, you'll be taken to my scheduling page where we can set up a strategy session. A 15 or 20-minute phone call where we can go through your questions about probate and give you some strategies to use with your estate plan to avoid these public filings. If you like this video, you can hit the like or thumbs up button below. You can go to YouTube or go to 𝑘𝙍𝙊𝙏𝙊.com and subscribe for future episodes. And remember, these public filings can be very invasive to your family's privacy after somebody has died, but you're not always required to disclose all of the assets. We can use some estate planning to protect your family's privacy.